In the crowded Nexus station, Zara, a beautiful but isolated humanoid woman, walks silently through the halls, her massive, fearsome companion, Gorgon, by her side. The station's inhabitants steer clear of them, terrified of the creature's glowing amber eyes and razor-sharp claws. But when a rugged human soldier named Jason locks eyes with Zara, something extraordinary happens. Instead of running in fear, Jason approaches Gorgon with calm confidence, earning the beast's trust in moments. As their unexpected bond begins to form, the chaos of an imminent attack looms. Will Zara and Jason's growing connection survive the dangers ahead, or will their love be tested beyond what they could ever imagine? Stay tuned to find out in this heart-pounding HFY tale of courage, love, and survival. If you're new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. The Nexus station was a vibrant, bustling hub in the heart of the galaxy. Ships from all corners of the universe docked, bringing travelers of various species and backgrounds. It was a place where cultures collided, where merchants from distant planets haggled over goods, and where strangers brushed past each other, unaware of the fates that might intertwine. The station was alive with activity, a whirlwind of colors and sounds that echoed through the long corridors. Among the many figures moving through the terminal, one stood out, even in the crowd. Zara, a tall humanoid woman with shimmering silver hair, walked gracefully through the spaceport. Her amethyst-colored eyes sparkled like precious gems, and her skin glowed faintly under the station's artificial lights. She was a vision of beauty, her movements fluid and almost otherworldly. Yet despite her ethereal appearance, Zara was an outcast. She moved through the crowd unnoticed by most, her striking beauty overshadowed by the intimidating creature that followed her every step. Zara's companion was no ordinary animal. Gorgon, a massive alien beast, walked silently beside her, its eyes glowing a menacing amber as it scanned the surrounding crowd. The creature's body was covered in sleek black fur, its muscles rippling with every movement. Gorgon's claws gleamed like knives and its fangs were long and sharp. With each step, the massive beast caused others to clear a path, their fear evident in their hurried glances and quick steps. To Zara, Gorgon was a loyal friend and protector. She had raised him from a cub, nurturing him as he grew into the formidable creature he was today. But to everyone else, Gorgon was nothing more than a terrifying monster, a creature to be avoided at all costs. Zara often found herself standing alone, her only company the silent, watchful presence of the beast. As she walked through the crowded spaceport, Zara couldn't help but feel the weight of the stares directed her way. People glanced at her and Gorgon with a mix of fear and curiosity, their eyes widening as the beast growled low in its throat. Zara's heart sank as she realized that no one would ever see her for who she truly was. She wasn't just the woman with the terrifying pet. She was lonely, desperate for someone to see beyond Gorgon's fearsome exterior and appreciate the person she was beneath it all. Her thoughts were interrupted when she noticed a human soldier entering the station. His broad shoulders and confident stride immediately caught her eye. He walked with purpose, his blue eyes scanning the crowd as he moved swiftly through the terminal. Zara couldn't help but notice how different he seemed from the others. He didn't shrink away in fear when he saw Gorgon. Instead, he met the creature's gaze with calmness and resolve. The soldier's name was Jason Reeves, and he was on a mission to deliver important intelligence to his superiors. He had been through countless battles, faced off with enemies from distant worlds, and survived the harshest environments the galaxy had to offer. But nothing in his training had prepared him for the sight that greeted him when he stepped into the bustling Nexus station. As Jason moved through the crowd, his gaze landed on Zara. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was the massive creature by her side that truly caught his attention. Gorgon stood motionless, its glowing eyes fixed on him, its muscles tense and ready to spring into action. Most people would have recoiled in fear, but Jason did not. Instead, he found himself intrigued by the strange pair. He had seen many alien species and their pets, but nothing quite like this. Jason was no stranger to danger. He had faced beasts, both alien and human, in his career as a soldier. But something about this creature, something about the bond between Zara and Gorgon, made him pause. He saw the way she moved with a quiet grace, the way she spoke to the beast with a tenderness that spoke volumes about their connection. In that moment, Jason realized that there was more to Zara than met the eye. Without hesitation, he made his way toward her. He moved slowly, cautiously as he approached the pair. Zara's eyes widened in surprise when she saw him walking toward them. She braced herself, preparing for the usual reaction, fear, perhaps even an attempt to flee. But to her astonishment, Jason didn't flinch. Instead, he knelt down in front of Gorgon, his eyes locking with the creature's. Zara held her breath, watching in disbelief. Jason's voice was calm, soothing as he spoke. "Hey there, big fella," he murmured, his hand outstretched toward the beast. "Aren't you a handsome one?" Zara couldn't believe what she was witnessing. She had spent years with Gorgon, and no one had ever approached him with such calmness, such lack of fear. She had grown used to the way people would avoid her, terrified of Gorgon's mere presence. But here was this human, speaking to him as though he were a tame house pet. For a moment, Gorgon stared at Jason, its amber eyes gleaming. Then slowly, the creature leaned forward, sniffing Jason's outstretched hand. Zara's heart skipped a beat as she watched the scene unfold. Gorgon nuzzled against Jason's palm, a low purr rumbling from deep within the beast's chest. It was as if Gorgon had accepted him, an approval Zara had never thought possible for anyone other than herself. Jason chuckled softly, scratching behind Gorgon's ears like he would a domestic cat. Zara stood frozen, unable to take her eyes off the unexpected interaction. She had never seen anyone treat Gorgon with such ease, with such familiarity. It was as though the beast, who had always been a source of fear for others, had suddenly transformed into something gentler, more approachable. The moment was surreal, and Zara felt something stir deep within her chest. Hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, she had found someone who could see past the terrifying creature at her side and appreciate her for who she truly was. As Jason stood up, he looked at Zara, meeting her gaze for the first time. A brief jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them, and for a moment the noise of the spaceport faded away. Jason smiled warmly, extending his hand to her. "I'm Jason," he said, his voice genuine. "It's a pleasure to meet you, and Gorgon." Zara hesitated, her heart racing as she took a step forward. She placed her hand in his, her voice soft and melodic as she replied, "I'm Zara, and this is Gorgon." For the first time in a long while, Zara felt a spark of hope. Could this be the beginning of something new, something wonderful? She didn't know, but she couldn't ignore the feeling that had settled in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, she had found someone who could see her, really see her. And for the first time, she wasn't alone. Days passed after Zara's unexpected encounter with Jason, and though she tried to go about her routine, the memory of their meeting lingered in her mind like a soft melody. Every time she closed her eyes, she could still see the way Jason had knelt before Gorgon, speaking to him with such calm and kindness. It had been such a simple gesture, but to Zara, it had meant everything. It was the first time anyone had approached Gorgon without fear, without hesitation. And it wasn't just the beast that had caught Jason's attention. It was her too. Zara had spent so many years in solitude, always hiding behind the fearsome image of Gorgon. Most people didn't even look at her, their gazes fixed firmly on the massive creature by her side. It wasn't that she minded the isolation. It was a small price to pay for Gorgon's protection. But now, after meeting Jason, she realized that she had longed for someone to see beyond the monster, to see her. She had to admit she found herself thinking about him more often than she would like to admit. His presence, his confidence, the way he had approached Gorgon without flinching, everything about him intrigued her. There was something about him that made her feel safe, something about his kindness that melted the wall she had carefully built around her heart. As she went about her duties at the Surfera Institute of Intergalactic Flora, studying alien plant species and their unique biological functions, her thoughts often drifted back to Jason. She tried to stay focused on her work, tending to the delicate plants and researching their complex ecosystems, but she couldn't shake the thought of his piercing blue eyes and the warmth in his smile. Every time she looked up from her research, she found herself hoping to see him again. It had been nearly a week since their encounter, and Zara had almost convinced herself that it had been a fleeting moment, one that would fade into memory like all the other brief interactions she had experienced in her life. She had told herself that she shouldn't expect anything more from it. After all, Jason had his own life, his own duties. He was a soldier, someone whose world was far different from hers. She couldn't afford to let herself hope for something more, but fate, it seemed, had other plans. Zara was walking through the market district of Surfera Station when she saw him again. At first, she thought her mind was playing tricks on her. She had been so lost in her thoughts that she hadn't even noticed the tall figure approaching her until it was too late. When she looked up, her heart skipped a beat as she saw Jason walking toward her, his eyes immediately locking onto hers. For a moment, time seemed to slow as they stared at each other, the world around them fading into the background. Jason smiled when he saw her, his eyes lighting up with recognition. "Zara," he said, his voice warm and inviting. "It's good to see you again." Zara felt a rush of emotions flood her chest. She had never expected to see him again, let alone under such casual circumstances. She smiled softly, her heart racing. "Jason," she replied, her voice betraying the excitement she felt. "What brings you here?" Jason scratched the back of his neck, looking slightly sheepish. "Well, I've been assigned to the station for a few days on a mission, and I wanted to check in on you. And Gorgon, of course," he added with a grin. Zara felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. Gorgon, the beast that had always driven people away, seemed to be the reason for Jason's visit. She couldn't help but feel a small pang of pride at the thought that Jason was genuinely interested in her and her companion. Over the following days, Jason's visits became a regular part of Zara's routine. Each time he arrived, Zara felt her heart flutter, as though their brief encounters were no longer enough. Their conversations, though seemingly simple, were always meaningful. They would talk about their respective worlds, Zara's work with intergalactic flora, and Jason's experiences as a soldier. He told her stories about his time in the military, about the missions he had completed, and the people he had met along the way. Zara, in turn, shared her knowledge of the many species she had studied, her voice growing animated as she spoke about the intricacies of alien plant life. Jason's curiosity about her work and her world was genuine, and Zara found herself drawn to him in a way she hadn't expected. There was something about him that made her feel heard, seen, and understood. She was no longer just the woman with the terrifying pet. She was Zara, someone with a passion, someone with hopes and dreams. And Jason made her feel as though those dreams mattered. As their friendship deepened, Zara couldn't help but notice how Jason seemed to have a natural connection with Gorgon. The beast, who had always been a symbol of fear, seemed to warm to Jason's presence. It wasn't just the way Jason spoke to Gorgon. It was the respect he showed him, the understanding in his voice when he addressed the creature. Zara had never seen anyone treat Gorgon with such calmness, and it made her feel more comfortable around Jason than she ever thought possible. But there was a part of Zara that hesitated. She had spent so many years hiding behind the guise of being just another alien woman with an intimidating companion. She feared that if she let her guard down, if she allowed herself to feel something more than friendship for Jason, she would only be disappointed. She had been hurt before, in ways that no one could understand. Love for her had always been a distant dream, something that happened to others, never to her. One evening, after a long day at the station, Zara found herself standing on the balcony of her quarters, staring out into the vast expanse of space. Gorgon lay at her feet, his massive head resting on his paws as he watched her quietly. Zara's thoughts were tangled in confusion and longing. She had come to care for Jason more than she had intended, but the fear of what might come of it held her back. Just then, a knock on her door broke her reverie. Zara turned to find Jason standing there, his expression serious but gentle. "Hey," he said softly, stepping into the room without waiting for an invitation. "I was wondering if you'd like to join me for a walk. I know it's late, but I've been thinking about you." Zara's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure what she had expected, but it wasn't this. She had always thought that a relationship like this was out of reach for someone like her. But now, standing here in front of him, with her heart racing in her chest, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she was wrong. With a smile, Zara nodded. "I'd love to." As they walked through the quiet halls of Surfera Station, Zara's mind raced. She knew that whatever happened between her and Jason from here on out, it would be more than just a passing encounter. It would be a moment in time that changed everything, not just for her but for both of them. Little did she know the journey ahead would be filled with even greater challenges and discoveries. But in that moment, with Jason by her side, Zara felt a sense of hope that she had never known before. The days following Zara and Jason's walk together felt surreal. Zara tried to maintain her usual composure as she moved through her duties at the Surfera Institute of Intergalactic Flora. However, her thoughts constantly returned to the human soldier with the gentle smile and the fearless way he had treated Gorgon. Every time she saw him, she couldn't help but feel the stirrings of something deeper than friendship, something she had long buried under layers of fear and solitude. Zara had never been one to open up easily, but with Jason, it felt different. He had shown her that it was okay to be vulnerable, that she didn't have to hide behind Gorgon's intimidating presence to protect herself. The trust she had begun to build with him was something new, and the more time they spent together, the more Zara realized just how much she valued him in her life. Jason, too, had started to let his guard down. The soldier who was used to keeping his emotions locked away was now finding himself drawn to Zara in ways he didn't quite understand. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. Beautiful, yes, but more than that, she was strong, intelligent, and kind. She didn't just accept Gorgon, she embraced him, and in doing so, she had accepted Jason too. That wasn't something he could take lightly. But amidst the growing connection between them, a storm was brewing. The Nexus Station, where they had met and where they both worked, was not just a peaceful haven for travelers. It was also a place of tension, with various factions vying for control. Zara had been aware of the undercurrents of political unrest, but she had never imagined that the station would become a battleground. It was late in the evening when the first explosions rocked the station. The blaring alarms were so loud they could be heard from every corner of Nexus, and the normally bustling corridors became a chaotic mess of panicked civilians and frantic security personnel. Zara was in her lab at the Institute when the first tremor hit, knocking over a collection of delicate plant specimens she had been studying. The lights flickered, and for a moment the entire station seemed to hold its breath. "Zara," a voice called from the hallway. It was Jason. Zara's heart leaped as she quickly gathered her belongings and rushed to the door. The corridor outside was already filled with smoke and flashing lights. Jason appeared, looking calm but intense. His usual uniform was replaced by a tactical suit, and he had a blaster strapped to his side. "Stay close," he said, his voice firm. "There's an attack on the station. We need to get to safety." Zara's mind raced. She had heard rumors of unrest, but this was something else entirely. As the sounds of gunfire echoed through the halls, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of dread. This was no longer just a political dispute. It was a full-scale assault. As she moved to follow Jason, Gorgon emerged from the shadows, his glowing amber eyes scanning the chaos. Zara placed a hand on his massive head, feeling the comforting weight of his presence. "I'm not leaving him behind," Zara said, her voice steady despite the rising panic. "Gorgon stays with me." Jason nodded, not hesitating for a second. "Of course, stick close." The two of them moved swiftly through the station, with Gorgon following obediently by Zara's side. The halls were a scene of utter chaos, with panicked civilians rushing in every direction. Armed soldiers were attempting to control the situation, but it was clear that the attackers were gaining ground. As they made their way toward the command center, Jason's eyes flicked to Zara. "Stay behind me," he said, his tone more urgent. "Now. We need to get to the command center. They'll have the situation under control there." Zara nodded, but something in her chest clenched. She wasn't just worried about the station, she was worried about Jason. She had seen his calm demeanor during their conversations, but she knew that he was more than just a soldier. He was a man with a deep sense of duty, and that would drive him to do whatever it took to protect the people around him. As they neared the command center, they were confronted by a group of mercenaries, heavily armed and determined to take control of the station. They were blocking the entrance, and it was clear that they weren't going to let anyone pass without a fight. Jason didn't hesitate. With a swift motion, he unsheathed his blaster and fired, taking down the first mercenary with a precision that left Zara in awe. His movements were fluid, graceful even, as he disarmed another attacker with ease. Zara's heart raced, not just from the adrenaline but from the realization that she was witnessing someone who was capable of incredible bravery. Zara stood by, her hand on Gorgon's massive head, as Jason moved through the group of attackers. With incredible efficiency. She had never seen him like this, focused, determined, and unstoppable. Her thoughts were interrupted when one of the mercenaries raised his blaster, aiming directly at Jason. Without thinking, Zara rushed forward, her voice ringing out, "No!" In a split second, Gorgon leaped, knocking the mercenary to the ground with a powerful swipe of his claws. Zara's heart was in her throat as she watched the beast subdue the attacker effortlessly. It was a moment of pure instinct, and it sent a surge of relief through her. "Thanks, Gorgon," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible. Jason, his blaster still raised, turned to her with a look of admiration. "That was, impressive." Zara couldn't help but smile, the weight of the situation sinking in. For the first time, she felt truly powerful. Not because of Gorgon's strength, but because of the bond they shared, a bond that had brought her to this moment. As the final mercenaries were subdued and taken into custody, the station's security forces regained control. The threat had been neutralized, but the lingering tension remained. Zara stood in the command center, her heart still racing from the events that had just unfolded. Jason turned to her, his face flushed with the exertion of battle, but his eyes were soft with concern. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. Zara looked at him, her heart swelling with a mix of gratitude and something deeper. She had never felt so vulnerable, so exposed. But in this moment, standing beside Jason, she also felt safer than she ever had before. "I'm fine," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Thanks to you and Gorgon." Jason smiled, stepping closer. "We make a good team." Zara's gaze met his, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, they did make a good team. And perhaps this was the start of something new, something that would change both their lives forever. As the dust settled and the station returned to a fragile calm, Zara felt a sense of determination settle in her chest. She had found someone who saw her, truly saw her, and she wasn't going to let fear hold her back anymore. Together, she and Jason could face anything. Weeks had passed since the attack on Nexus Station, and life seemed to be returning to its usual rhythm. The station's hustle and bustle had resumed, but for Zara and Jason, everything had changed. They had fought side by side, and in doing so, their connection had deepened in ways neither of them could have expected. The bond they shared now felt unbreakable, forged in the heat of battle and tempered by trust, respect, and something even more profound: love. Zara, who had spent most of her life keeping her emotions hidden behind the wall of fear that surrounded Gorgon, found herself opening up to Jason in ways she had never imagined. She spoke of her dreams, of her work at the Surfera Institute of Intergalactic Flora, her passion for studying alien plant life, and her deep-rooted desire to make a meaningful impact on the galaxy. Jason listened intently, his blue eyes filled with admiration as she shared her thoughts. She had always felt like an outsider, someone who didn't quite belong. But with Jason, she felt like she had finally found someone who understood her. In Return. Jason opened up about his life as a soldier, his years of training, and the countless missions that had shaped him into the man he was. He told Zara about the friends he had lost, the battles he had fought, and the pain of never knowing if he was truly making a difference. But in Zara's company, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of peace. With her, he didn't have to be the soldier. He could simply be himself. It wasn't just their shared moments of quiet conversation that drew them closer, it was their actions. They continued to face challenges together, whether it was navigating the complexities of station politics or simply making time to enjoy each other's company amidst the chaos of their lives. Every moment spent together was a step closer to something neither of them had expected, but both of them were beginning to realize they couldn't live without. As the weeks turned into months, Zara couldn't shake the thought of the future. Jason had been offered a new mission, a transfer to a research facility on a distant planet called Milanus. The assignment was prestigious, and it was something that would advance his career. But when he told Zara about it, she noticed the hesitation in his voice, the way his eyes lingered on her before he spoke. Zara could sense the conflict within him. He had become so much more than just a soldier to her. He had become someone she couldn't imagine her life without. The thought of him leaving was almost unbearable, but she knew he couldn't remain in limbo forever. He had a duty to fulfill, just as she had her research and responsibilities. Jason, noticing the quiet sadness in Zara's eyes, reached for her hand one evening as they sat together on the balcony of her quarters, overlooking the vast expanse of the galaxy. "Zara," he began, his voice softer than usual, "I've been offered a transfer to Milanus. It's a huge opportunity for me, but I don't want to go if it means leaving you behind." Zara's heart fluttered. She had always known that Jason's life as a soldier would take him places, but the idea of being separated from him was more than she could bear. She turned to him, her lavender eyes filled with a mix of emotions. "You should go," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "You've earned it. Milanus is a big step forward for you, Jason. You deserve to take it." Jason shook his head, his fingers tightening around hers. "But it doesn't feel right without you," he confessed. "Zara, I don't want to leave you behind. You've become everything to me." Zara's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment everything around them seemed to fade away. There, in that quiet moment, she knew that what they shared was more than just a fleeting connection. It was something deep and lasting. The universe had brought them together against all odds, and now it was time for them to make a decision about the future. After much deliberation, Zara knew that her path was entwined with Jason's. They had already fought together, laughed together, and shared their hopes and dreams. She couldn't bear the thought of him leaving, but at the same time she knew that his mission in Milanus would only strengthen him, both as a soldier and as a man. As difficult as it was, she realized that she needed to let him go, if only for a little while. But there was one thing she was certain of. She couldn't let go of what they had. She wouldn't. Zara had spent so many years of her life in isolation, but with Jason she had found something worth fighting for, something worth building. Jason stood up, walking toward the edge of the balcony, looking out at the endless stars that twinkled in the distance. Zara joined him, standing silently at his side. "Jason," she said, her voice calm but full of emotion, "I want to be with you. Wherever you go, I want to be there too." Jason turned to her, his eyes wide, with surprise. "What are you saying?" Zara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her decision settle in her chest. "I want to go with you to Milanus. If that's where you need to be, then I'll be right beside you. We'll face whatever comes together." Jason's heart raced, his breath catching in his throat. For the first time he realized that Zara wasn't just a part of his life, she was his life. And the thought of being with her in every corner of the galaxy was more than he could have ever dreamed. "I never expected this," Jason said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I don't think I can live without you either." And so together they made their decision. Zara would leave Sifera Station and travel with Jason to Milanus, where their lives would take on a new direction. There they would continue their work, But more importantly, they would build a future together, a future of love, adventure, and endless possibilities. Days passed, and soon it was time for them to leave. Zara packed her belongings, including her research and a few personal items, and with Gorgon at her side, she made her way to the spacecraft that would carry them to Milanus. Jason stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders as they walked toward their new life. As the ship lifted off from Surfera Station, Zara looked out the viewport, her heart filled with anticipation for what lay ahead. The vast expanse of space stretched out before them, an endless sea of stars. But with Jason by her side, Zara felt ready to face whatever the universe had in store for them. And in that moment she knew that their love, like the stars themselves, would endure. No matter what challenges came their way, they would face them together. For Zara and Jason, this was just the beginning of their journey, a journey that would take them across the stars, through countless worlds, and into a future that was theirs to shape. As the ship sped toward Milanus, the universe no longer seemed vast and distant. It felt small, almost intimate, for Zara and Jason had found each other. And with each passing moment, their love grew stronger. It was a love that had transcended the stars, defied the odds, and would endure for a lifetime. Together, they would face the future, side by side as one. And in the end, they knew that love truly did conquer all.